the stand. Now he runs. He produces a magic trick. He pulls out another one. This is incredible. This is ridiculous. This is 15 out of 10 on the incredible meter. What a player. What an entertainer. Give him the medal. Give him the Dally M medal.
Hello, footy fans, and welcome back to the Chip and Chase podcast. We're here once again, going to be previewing the Saturday games for round 2 of the NRL Telstra Premiership season in this podcast. So let's not waste any time and let's get right into it. The first of these games, of course, is the Raiders and the Wests Tigers, taking place Saturday 3 p.m. at GIO Stadium in Canberra. So, of course, there's a few things to talk about in this one. If you haven't seen the last podcast, go back and watch it. Just previewing the Thursday-Friday games. But what I've sort of just alluded to is I'm not going to be doing the typical Teamless Tuesday podcasts anymore. I think the best way to sort of talk about the teams as a whole are in these sort of preview podcast sort of things. And that stands true in this one. Of course, we got the Tigers making their first game of the NRL season. They had the bye in round 1. So we get a whole fresh new look at their team. Didn't get to see anything that was named. So we will spend a little time looking over that team. But yeah, we will just start by looking over the Raiders team. Not too many things to talk about. This is why I didn't want to make those Teamless Tuesday podcasts as a whole anymore. When teams don't make that many changes, is it really worth a podcast? I don't want to read through 1 to 17 every game. But for the Raiders, with the ins and outs, we do have Seb Chris returning from suspension. He replaces Nick Kotrick with Albert Hopewate, who played in the centres in round 1, moving to that wing spot to replace Kotrick. So that is very interesting, seeing Chris come back on the wing. I was worried that they'd end up playing him at fullback once again, and Jordan Rapana would, sort of be the one to move back into the wing position. But I like this. I prefer this more. I don't think Rapana is the best option at fullback, but he does a job. He puts his hand up and does a lot of effort in every game. Jordan Rapana, really good player. Love him to bits, and I prefer him as a fullback to Seb Chris, to be honest. And if this is how you can structure your team, then I think he's the best fit there as well. But that's sort of the only the change in this Raiders team. They're still missing players like Elliot Whitehead, which means Zach Hosking continues to lock down that second row spot at the moment. And Danny Levi has been named at hooker, despite the injury that he suffered in round 1. So, as I said, they take on the Wests Tigers. I will sort of just read through this team 1 to 17. But at fullback, we have Jareem Buller. Charlie Staines is on the wing with Junior Tupou, as we expected. Stafford Toa is one centre position with Solomona Fartape in the other centre position. Of course, played for the Brisbane Tigers in 2023 in the Queensland Cup. He's been brought over on a 1-year, I think it's a development deal for the Tigers. Just Nolan, of course, missing in this game, dealing with a bit of an injury. Not too sure how long he will be out, but Solomona Fartape is the man to replace him for this one, making his NRL debut, so that's really great to see. Hope he has a great game. The halves is where this Tigers team gets really interesting. Young 18-year-old Lachlan Galvin has been named at 5'8", with Jaden Sullivan getting the nod at halfback over Aiden Caesar, who we will get to in a little bit of time. We'll touch on this a bit more later, but I'll continue running through this team list. Stefano Utoi Kamanu and David Clemmer are the front rowers for this side. Apasai Coruscant, the captain, is the hooker. Isaiah Papali'i and John Bateman are the second rowers, and Alex Seyfarth is the lock forward. On the interchange for the Tigers, we have Aiden Caesar at 14, Fanua Pole at 15, Alex Twal at 16, and Samuela Fainu at 17. Wait, so there's no Alex Twal. Is he injured? Oh, no, he is. I just said him at 16. Jesus. Ignore me, guys. It's been a long day. But yeah, so interesting to touch on here with the Tigers. I hate it. I really do. I think they looked abysmal in the trials whenever Aiden Caesar wasn't on the field. I think what he brought to that team in terms of stability and direction is exactly what they brought him to the club for, and he did a great job of it when he was on the field for the Tigers in the trials. I thought Jaden Sullivan looked average at best in the trials, and while I did like the look of Lockie Galvin, I thought, he's 18, let him build some time in New South Wales Cup, or at least play him off the bench. Why you pick Aiden Caesar at 14 is beyond me. He has the least explosive and, just ability off the bench. Like, if you choose to bring him onto this game at any point, what happens to the game plan? He's not someone who can break the game open. He just brings direction and stability, and he does a great job of that. I'm a big fan of Aiden Caesar. Don't get me wrong. This is me trying to take a stab at him. I think Caesar's a great player. I've always liked him. But he doesn't bring any real impact off that bench. While you have players like Lachie Galvin, an 18-year-old looking to inject himself and prove himself in the NRL, he would bring that impact. Or Jaden Sullivan, who has brought that impact in games, for the Dragons in his career before. I don't understand why you run with Galvin and Sullivan and you leave Caesar on the bench. I think it's a bad decision, but we'll have to see how it all plays out for the Tigers. I'm not a head coach of the NRL, what Benji Marshall is. So my word really means nothing on this situation. But yeah, well, it'll be very interesting to sort of see how this Tigers team plays out. In saying all of this, I do hope Lachlan Galvin and Jaden Sullivan have good games. Like, I'm not trying to death ride them. I'd love to see the 18-year-old come in who's been talked about in, really big lights by Benji, and he's really rated him. I'd love to see him come out and play really well. And in terms of Jaden Sullivan, he's had a lot of hype around him. Obviously, with the Dragons sort of shit show of the last couple of years, he's found his place at the Tigers. It'd be good for him to come and find his feet as well. Like, it's not me having a go at these two players or even a go at Caesar, who, as I've stated, I'm a big fan of. I just don't really get the direction of that. But Benji would have a plan in mind. It'll be really interesting to see how that all plays out. So in saying that, we can sort of get into how I see this game playing out, which is I see the Raiders getting the win. I think, Tigers, they will improve. I think they have to. Well, as we said it last year, the only way is up, and it turns out, they had an extra team, and they actually went down to 17th. But I think they can't get the wooden spoon again. Like, can they? It's a tough gig to do it 3 times in a row. I think everything I'm hearing out of Tigers camp and the way that they've finally sacked the board and they're believing in Benji Marshall, I think it's all really good stuff. It's a direction that the Tigers have needed. I think the players are really buying into Benji's style of coaching, which I love to hear. Benji, of course, is probably the greatest West Tigers player of all time. And as a club legend, now being your coach, you're going to respect that and you're going to turn up for him and turn up for that jersey and the history behind it. So I really like that. I just think, coming into this season, the Raiders got a really good win against the Knights in round 1. They like playing a gritty style of footy. And I think this Tigers team, that while they can be electric, they can be exciting, they're going to get roped into that. They're still finding combinations, especially with this young halves combo. I think Raiders will just rope them into a battle of the forwards. And while this is a pretty strong forward pack for the Tigers, I think the Raiders will know how to get the best of them and get over the top of them. So I do see the Raiders winning this one. I don't see it being much. Raiders often don't win by much. In fact, their win against the Knights in week 1 of the NRL season this year was like the first time in well over a year that they've won a game by more than 12 points. So that's incredible in itself. So I see Raiders getting away with this one, 1-12 would sort of be my little tip with that. But regardless, I'd just have the Raiders winning this one anyway. But hey, I'd love more than anything for the Tigers to come out, shut me up and prove me wrong, because I don't like seeing clubs struggle. I like a consistent league. I like competitive games no matter what. And I hope the Tigers can come out and just give back to their fans who have stuck through this dark period in their club's history. I don't see them winning, as I said, but I'd like a nice competitive game from these two clubs. In terms of matchups in this game, there's a few to sort of look at. I really like the look of the 5'8", which I think is my matchup of the game. I think Ethan Strange is still 18. I'll quickly actually look that one up. Don't mind me. Might be 19 now, Ethan Strange. Yeah, he's 19 as of August last year. So the 19-year-old rookie against the 18-year-old rookie at 5'8". Love that. I think both will be looking to come in and stamp their authority. Ethan Strange had a pretty quiet game in that round 1 clash against the Knights, but I think now that they got that win, even without him being a superstar player, he's going to have more confidence and more trust in his team and in himself to just come out and bring a bit more to this game. While Lachlan Galvin, he seemed to, even in the trials, he was throwing his hand around. He really was getting involved, and I love to see that from him, and that's why the Raps are so high on him. So that's definitely my number 1 matchup in this one. Other than that, I really like the forward pack, especially in the front row department. I think Stefano and David Klemmer against Joseph Tarpany and Josh Papali'i, really like that. Stefano and Tarpany sort of in almost the peak of their powers. Stefano's probably got a bit more growing to do, but he's on that trajectory. Tarpany probably is in the peak of his powers. While Josh Papali'i and David Klemmer, they're on the wind down, but they're still really, really great footballers and really good, veterans for their side. So I really like that matchup in the front row department as well. Even across everything else, I like Papali'i and Bateman against Hudson Young and Zach Hoskins, and I even like the Englishman of Morgan Smithies against almost a stalwart of this Tigers team. He's almost a veteran of this Tigers team now, Alex Seyfarth, one of the players that has been there the longest. He's come through their grades and he's still there, which is something I really like to see. So, yeah, really like the forward pack duel, but yeah, definitely my number one matchup in this game is the young 5'8", Ethan Strange and Lachlan Galvin. In terms of my multi for this game, keep in mind I'll say it every time I do one of these, I bet through Sportsbet. I'm not affiliated with Sportsbet in every way. They're just the agency I choose to bet through. And keep in mind that if you are betting, you're doing it of your own accord. Don't bet what you can't afford. It's just for a little bit of fun. If you are following my bets and my tips, if they don't get up, you cannot blame me. You are choosing to follow these. This is just me putting them out into the world. It's your choice to follow them. It is not my responsibility how much you bet, and what tips you follow. This is just a bit of content, guys. So if you are jumping on them, have a bit of fun. Let's ride them together. Let's, message me. Give me a message on Instagram. We can joke about it. We can have fun. If we get up, good for us. If we don't, let's laugh about it. Do not bet what you can't afford, guys. Let's make that really, really apparent. It's a bit of fun, and gambling, you lose more than you win. So please do not, just gamble responsibly, guys. I'll say it every time, just gamble responsibly. But the multi I have on for this one, as I said, I've got the Canberra Raiders winning 1-12. That is one of the legs of this multi. I have Seb Chris on his return back from suspension as an anytime try scorer for the Canberra Raiders, and I have the match going under 44.5 total match points. We know the Raiders, they love a gritty affair. I think this one will be a close scoring game. Tigers, they struggle to score points. At least in, seasons past, they've struggled to score points, except for when they, versus the Cowboys and decide they're the best team in the NRL. So I think under 44.5 is a pretty safe bet. And I like the Raiders 1-12. Seb Chris, anytime try scorer. And, that multi comes to $13.75. So if you're putting $1 on that, you win $13.75 back. Pretty darn good value. So that is definitely one of my favorite bets of the round. That's just something I'm pretty confident in. But hey, who knows if it'll get up. If you're looking for just an anytime try scorer bet that isn't Seb Chris that I put in this one, I really like Zach Hosking. As I said, he's one of my favourite sort of players in the NRL nowadays, a perfect fit for this Raiders team. And he's a second rower who knows how to sniff out a try and find his way to the try line. On the opposite side of the field, I like Isaiah Papali'i for the Tigers as well. I think if these two Tigers halves want to take control of this game, they're going to be out to prove themselves. The threat of Aiden Caesar looming for them, their positions under threat. I think they're going to link well with their back rowers, either Papali'i or Bateman. I see one of them crossing for the game. I'm going to go with Papali'i based on just what he did, the try-scoring prowess he showed at the Eels. So he's not a bad bet there. Both pretty good value bets in Hosking and Papali'i. But yeah, my definite one would be Seb Chris. Not the most appealing odds there, but just the one that sort of sticks out to me the most. But yeah, guys, that is how I see this one sort of playing out. As I said, Raiders coming away 1-12 victors. They are my tip for this game. So we won't waste any further time on this one, and we will move on to what are we up to? The Cowboys and the Knights, taking place Saturday, 16th of March, 5:30 p.m. at Queensland Country Bank Stadium in Townsville. So, of course, we have the Cowboys home game. I'll quickly run over these teams, not 1-17, but any ins and outs. With the Cowboys, there is nothing to my knowledge that they have changed. So, yeah, not much of note there. Of course, we'll have to see what Todd Payten decides to do with Jason Taumalolo. Played the 20 minutes or 21 minutes in round one. It'll be interesting to see if he has a similar role against the Knights in this one. I think the Knights had a pretty poor showing, especially in the forward pack in round one. So if the Cowboys are just dominating, maybe Taumalolo gets a big rest again. As for the Knights, however, they are without Inari Tuala, who went down injured in that game last week. He's replaced by Thomas Jenkins, the recruit from Penrith, on the wing. And they are also missing Dylan Lucas in the second row, replaced by Kai Pearce-Paul, who moved from the bench into that run-on second row position. And on the bench for the Newcastle Knights, Jed Cartwright takes that interchange spot. So definitely some things to note there for the Knights. I think Thomas Jenkins, he's always been a pretty highly touted player coming out of Penrith. You know, someone that they had to let go. You know, Penrith are dealing with a lot of salary cap issues, such as what happens when you're a successful club. Knights did well to go after Jenkins. I think he's a really good signing for this club. Could be very hard for Inari Tuala to snag that spot back off him if he plays well in this one. And the same goes for Kai Pearce-Paul, obviously the highly touted recruit from England, just a monster of a human being, such an athlete. Dylan Lucas will have a lot of trouble taking that position back from him. I expect Kai Pearce-Paul to go really well in this game, especially if he's playing anywhere close to 80 minutes. So I'm excited for that matchup. In terms of matchups, I guess that's the segue into it. The ones that stand out to me, Scott Drinkwater, Kalen Ponga, the superstar fullbacks. I think neither of them really had their best games. Not that either of them played poorly at all, but we know what these two are capable of. Kalen Ponga, he had his moments, and I think he'll be out to, show why he's still the reigning Dally M medalist. While Scott Drinkwater, in a game that the Cowboys put a lot of points on, I think he's going to come out in this game and he might find his way into a few more try assists or tries himself. So that's my number one matchup. Beyond that, I also really like the matchup of the second rowers once again. You'll find a theme. I really love second rowers in the NRL. But yeah, it could be the matchups every single time. The Cowboys second rowers of Hylam Lukey and Jeremiah Nanai, so exciting, so fun to watch. And they go up against the veteran and who had a killer game in round one, Tyson Frizzell. And, of course, the other superstar from England in Kai Pearce-Paul. So that is up there with my other matchup to watch. Really, really like how these guys are going to be going at each other all night. Really exciting stuff there. In terms of how I see this game playing out, I have tipped the Cowboys for this game. I'm not the most confident in it. I'm not going to go out there and say 1-12 or 13 plus or anything. I just think that they get away with it. I think from what I saw in round one, their forward pack was super strong, and I really wasn't convinced particularly the middles of the Newcastle Knights. I think the Saifiti brothers and Leo Thompson, I know he escapes criticism a lot because he's been a weapon for them since coming into their grade, but I thought he was pretty disappointing last week as well, and I think they all have to stand up big in this one if they're going to match it with this Cowboys forward pack. And because of that, I'm just going to tip on what I know, and I think the Cowboys get away with it in this one. I think their forward pack would be too much for the Knights, and we saw how devastating their attack was. I think they'll come away with a few points. I think Knights will definitely put in a better performance than they did in round one. I suspect they will score a few more points themselves as well, but not enough to topple the Cowboys. So I've got the Cowboys winning this one. In terms of the multi, that is one of the legs. Cowboys with a head-to-head win. I've got Kai Pearce-Paul as an anytime try scorer for the Knights. Someone, as I said, I'm very excited to see how he fares in an 80-minute role. I think he's just such a damaging footballer. There'll be a lot of eyes on him all night, and I think he'll come up with the goods. And I've got the match going over 46.5 total match points. Obviously, quite a high number, that one, but these are two very exciting attacking teams in the NRL. And I think, points might not be at a premium in this one. They should be pretty easy to come by. So I don't mind that as a leg. So that multi there, definitely not the most valuable of all the ones I've done this week, but that comes to a value of $11.50. So if you're putting $1 on that, you can potentially win $11.50 back if all the legs get up. If they don't, well, you know the deal. So that'll do us for that one. Cowboys to get away with it in the wrap-up. And not sure how it goes. Could be 13 plus, could be 1-12. We'll have to see. But it's an exciting game for round two. Two teams that I'm really excited about in 2024. I mean, every team this year I'm really pretty excited about, except the Dragons, who I if you've heard recently, I have been pretty high on the Dragons. It was just during the preseason and beforehand that I was pretty down on them. So, yeah, what an exciting year we've got ahead of us. But without any further ado, we'll get into the final Saturday game, which of course is the Melbourne Storm taking on the New Zealand Warriors, Saturday, 16th of March, 7:35 p.m. at Amy Park in Melbourne. So, of course, let's start with just going through, what sort of ins and outs there are for these teams. In terms of the Storm, there is nothing to note. They're lining up with the exact same team that they went into round one against the Panthers with, the team that they actually toppled that Penrith team with. Still no Cameron Munster, hasn't even been named in the reserves. Same goes for Nelson Asofa-Solomona. So they still could be a while off. I think Storm are a bit confused about what's going on with this Cameron Munster situation. We're not really sure how long it's going to go on for. But yeah, he's not in this one. So Jenna Pezzett still lines up in the 5/8 position against the Warriors. As for the Warriors, not too much to note here. They have named Wade Egan and Kurt Capewell, who both suffered injuries in week one against the Sharkies. I suspect Kurt Capewell will play this game, but I am very concerned about whether or not Wade Egan will end up lining up there. It didn't look good for him with that elbow injury in round one. And I don't know if he can really just suffer through it and get through this one. So if I had to put money on it, I'd say he might be a late scratching for the Warriors, with Freddie Lussick probably filling in at hooker, and I'd expect someone like Jazz Tavanga to come onto that bench who can cover a bit of anything. But for now, they have named him, and hopefully he does play. As a Warriors fan, love him as a player. I think we need him if we're going to win a lot of games this season. But yeah, not too hopeful that he does end up playing this game. Beyond that, in terms of how I sort of see this playing out, I call it the Warriors bias. I don't mind the Warriors getting away with a win in this one. It is an Amy Park, so it is very, very difficult. And Storm, they rarely drop games against us, but I think the Warriors have a lot to prove after that first game. I'm going to put it down to, if Wade Egan does play this game, I think the Warriors get away with a win. If Wade Egan is a late scratching and he's ruled out, I think the Storm come away with the win. So it all sort of rests on Wade Egan, unfortunately, to the guy, no pressure. And, if he is struggling with an injury, just sit out. We don't want players to go out there and beat themselves to a pulp when they're already injured. So, yeah, I guess I'm fence sitting here. But it all rests on Wade Egan. If he's in for this game, Warriors win. And if he isn't, I think the Storm come away with it. Definitely a hard game to pick. Both teams in different circumstances. Warriors, I thought, would come out and win in round one pretty comfortably. They did not. Well, the Storm, I thought, would lose, maybe not comfortably, but just to a strong Penrith team. And they got away with the win. So two teams I was wrong about in week one. Let's see how I end up tipping in this one. In terms of the bet for this game, I have the Warriors with a plus 6.5 line. So for those of you who don't know how that works, basically it means they've got a 6.5 head start. They start the game with 6.5 points on the board. So if they end up losing this game by 6 points to the Melbourne Storm, it will still pay that leg out. If they lose it by 7 points, for instance, that leg will lose. So yeah, it's just essentially a 6.5 point head start. So I've got that as one of the legs to the multi. I've got Eliesa Katoa as an anytime try scorer, and I've got the match going under 39.5 total match points. I think it could be a bit of a grindy affair. Both teams can definitely score points, but Warriors struggled a bit in that first game to score points, and so did the Melbourne Storm, only with that one try, obviously. So I don't mind that going under the 40 points, essentially, 40 match points. In terms of my favourite matchup for this game, let me have a look across the board. I really like the look of Sean Johnson and Jerome Hughes, the two, 1 and 2 ranked New Zealand halfbacks out there. I think Johnson's going to be in for another big game, and I think Hughes, especially with Munster out, will be looking to put forward a good game himself. He's put his hand up in the preseason saying he needs to be better. He needs to be more consistent across all of his games this year. and I think he will have a really good game. So I really like the halfback duel in this one between the two Kiwi halfbacks. And honestly, not too much really else stands out to me. If Wade Egan does play, I like the matchup of Harry Grant and Wade Egan. I thought they were 1 and 2 best hookers in the NRL last year. But definitely my matchup in this one would be Jerome Hughes and Sean Johnson. So I guess that sort of wraps us up. There's not too much more to note on these ones. This one's already gone for about 25 minutes, this podcast. So once again, I'll thank you guys for tuning into this one. We'll be back once again in the lead up to the Sunday games to cover those last 2 games. So thank you guys for tuning into this one. Once again, I will plug the Instagram if you want to engage with me. If you do choose to get on any of these bets and you want to, as I said, engage with me, talk to me about them, have a bit of a laugh, that's the place to do it. Follow me at the Chip and Chase podcast there. Send me a few messages and we can, follow this stuff together. We can ride the wave together. And if you just want a bit more content in between, as I said, sort of stuff that doesn't get posted, doesn't get covered on these podcasts, the Instagram page is the way to, keep up to date on that sort of stuff. But once again, thank you guys for tuning into this one, and I will see you guys next time.